Nestled in the picturesque valley of Chew in Somerset lies the village of Winford. A seemingly idyllic rural community, Winford in 1883 was a world away from the bustling cities of Victorian England. Life here revolved around the rhythms of the land, with agriculture forming the backbone of the local economy. Generations of families toiled in the fields, their lives intertwined with the changing seasons. Yet beneath the tranquil facade, a more industrial side to Winford was emerging. The discovery of iron ore in the Mendip Hills, bordering Chew Valley, had brought with it a new industry and a new breed of worker to the region. The miners, hardened by their dangerous trade, brought with them a sense of grit and resilience. The mines, while offering employment, also cast a shadow over the village. Accidents were commonplace, and the promise of prosperity often gave way to the harsh reality of a life of toil. Winford, in 1883, was a village of many contrasts. The traditional way of life, rooted in agriculture, was slowly giving way to the demands of the industrial age. This different way of life often brought with it new tensions, altering the social fabric of the peaceful village life. While the Industrial Revolution had brought about unprecedented technological advancements and economic growth, it had also created a stark divide between the haves and have-nots. For the working class in villages like Winford, life was still ordinarily mundane. The agricultural industry, though still central to the local economy, offered little in the way of financial security. Wages were low, hours were long, and the threat of unemployment loomed large. Many villagers turned to the burgeoning mining industry, hoping to find a more stable livelihood. The iron ore mines promised steady work and a chance to escape the drudgery of farm life. However, this promise came at a cost. The work was arduous and demanding, blasting the rock from the earth, then breaking up the stone with sledgehammers and wedges to be carried in wagons up to the surface. Miners faced the constant threat of cave-ins from collapses of props and supports. Despite the hardships they endured, the people of Winford were a resilient and resourceful lot. They toiled tirelessly to provide for their families and held on to a strong sense of community. Neighbors looked out for one another, sharing what little they had in times of need. There was a shared understanding of the challenges they faced, a bond forged in adversity. The winter of 1883 had descended upon Winford, casting a chill over the village and its inhabitants. The days were short, the nights were long, and a sense of unease hung in the air. It was on a Sunday, the 7th of January, that the tranquility of Winford was shattered, forever marking this date in the annals of the village's history. As the sun began to set across the frost-covered fields, a young man named Mark Cox prepared to leave his family's modest cottage. At the tender age of 17, Mark was already a vital contributor to his family's income. Like many young men in Winford, he had sought employment in the iron ore mines, drawn by the promise of a steady wage. That evening, Mark was scheduled to work the night shift, a grueling but necessary task that would allow him to contribute to his family's meager income. As was his usual routine, he bid farewell to his loved ones and stepped out into the cold winter night. Little did he know that this would be the last time he would ever see their faces. As darkness enveloped the village, a sense of foreboding descended upon Winford. The stage was set for a night of unimaginable horror, a night that would forever stain the soul of the once peaceful village. The rough path to the mine wound its way through the heart of Winford, passing by the darkened cottages of sleeping families, their windows like vacant eyes staring out into the night. Mark had walked this path countless times before, his footsteps echoing against the cobblestones, each stride a testament to the rhythm of his life. The usual sounds of the village slumbering, the distant barking of a dog, the creak of a weather vane, the murmur of voices from behind closed doors, were absent. As he passed by a corner of the road, a sudden blow hit his head, then another, sending Mark tumbling to the ground. It had all been so sudden, unexpected, that even his hand was still in the pocket of his trouser when he was later found. Blood trickled everywhere as Mark lay dying. His brain had been smashed in, his jaw broken and ear split. As dawn came on the morning of January 8th, a pale and feeble orb did little to penetrate the foggy grip over Winford. As a passerby on about his own business stumbled upon the grisly sight that would forever be seared into his memory, that of young Mark's body, a life cut short in the most unfortunate of circumstance. News of the gruesome discovery soon spread through Winford, infecting every corner of the once peaceful village with fear and suspicion. Soon detectives arrived in the village and begun their search of every corner of Winford for clues, scrutinizing each and every piece of information and each and every gossip. When the detectives descended upon the home of the Wedlake family, their arrival sent nervous ripples among the home's inhabitants. Hidden beneath a pile of freshly laundered clothes, its fabric stiff with dried blood, lay a man's coat. The investigators were immediately suspicious of the blood. Soon afterwards, a blood sickle belonging to the Wedlakes was also recovered from a nearby field, laying further suspicion upon them. The brother Thomas Wedlake and Joseph Wedlake were taken in for questioning, leaving many neighbors in disbelief and shock. Under a lot of pressure and scrutiny from law enforcement, Thomas Wedlake, the elder brother, his spirit broken by guilt and despair, confessed to knowing more about the murder of Mark Cox than he had initially revealed. He informed the investigators that Joseph, their brother, had done it. And at the heart of the tragedy lay a tale as old as time, a love triangle fueled by jealousy and possessiveness. Joseph Wedlake had intended to target his love rival, Mr. Thatcher, who had been in competition with him for the affections of Emma Pierce's. Emma Pierce and Joseph were cousins, and when Joseph was staying with his cousin's family, he had developed deep affection for her. For a while, Emma had returned this affection until Thatcher appeared from a neighboring farm and started to court Emma. And it seems Emma, of course preferring the fresher man on the scene, had also taken a liking to Mr. Thatcher. This enraged Wedlake. His mind became consumed by jealous rage. He had resolved to confront his rival. On the night of the murder, Emma had been out walking with Mr. Thatcher and a friend. Joseph had followed them as Mr. Thatcher walked Emma and her friend back home, then watched and waited. He wanted to eliminate Mr. Thatcher. His mind was quite made up. His plan was to ambush Mr. Thatcher on his way home. Only that in the dark, foggy night it wasn't Mr. T he jumped upon, but poor Mr. Mark Cox on his way to work at the mine. A most unfortunate case of mistaken identity. Joseph had of course realized midway through the attack that it wasn't Mr. Thatcher, but decided there was no stopping anyway. So with the confession of Thomas, his brother, the investigation moved swiftly. Joseph also later confessed and unburdened his guilty mind. The evidence against him was compelling, a tapestry woven from his brother's confession, eyewitness accounts, and physical evidence. When the case went to trial, by his own confession, Joseph had sealed his fate, and the jury had no trouble coming to a conclusion. He was found guilty of the willful murder of Mark Cox. And on a bleak morning of May 1883, just 5 months after the murder of Mark Cox, Joseph Wedlake was hanged for his crime. The execution of Joseph Wedlake did little to heal the wounds inflicted upon the village of Winford. A family lost their beloved son at the hands of another, their son mistaken for another villager, a love rival, and murdered the man in cold blood. The Winford murder resonates with a timeless and universal quality. It speaks to the destructive power of jealousy. Joseph, fueled with jealous, had sought to solve his relationship problems violently. The case highlights the unexpected way life can suddenly end. Mark Cox, a young man full of promise, became an unwitting victim at the wrong place and wrong time.